he's sitting there. He looks at Eddie, and Eddie's going up and down the neck, and Les is there like not making any like, oh my God, you're just looking at him like this, shaking his head. So Eddie goes up, and I think he finished with eruption, like going up and down, and Eddie's like, "What do you think?" He goes, like that. So Eddie looks at Les, and he goes, "Do you still got it, Les?" He goes, "I think so." So hands him the guitar. Les puts on the Wolfgang guitar, Eddie Van Halen Wolfgang guitar. He looks at Eddie, goes, "Turn that amp up." Eddie goes, "Whoa!" So all of a sudden, Les goes, "You ready?" And Eddie and his guitar tech, Matt Brock at the time, all of us, Eddie goes, "We're ready." So Les takes the high E, turns it up, and just bends the string. Now the sustain is just ringing, one note, and it's ringing for like 10, 15 seconds. And all of a sudden, Eddie grabs the neck of the guitar and goes, "I get it, Les."
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of 2020. I'm Benny Goodman. I'm here with my friends and cohorts in crime, Siobhán Cronin and Cory Peza. But this week, we talk about all things Les Paul and, dare I say, one of the greatest Eddie Van Halen stories ever. If that's not enough reason to listen to the rest of this episode, then I don't like you.
Well, we don't really even need much more than that, but
yeah. So here we go. Let's just let it be.
Jimmy Wysocki, the mayor of Mahwah, New Jersey, and all things Les Paul, the gatekeeper.
Part 2 right now. Like and subscribe 2020-d.com.
Van Halen! Hello and welcome back to another episode of 2020. Here as always, it's me, Benny, and Siobhán, and we're super pumped to welcome back Jim Wysocki, the mayor, the firefighter, and the keeper of Les Paul's legacy. If you didn't check out part 1 yet, go back. It's such a crazy story and just a really impressive show of friendship that Jim has taken on this mission to share Les's legacy with the world. And I know that at the end of the last episode, Ben was foaming at the mouth, waiting to jump in. So let me toss it back over to Ben here to get us kicked off in part 2.
So the thing I was trying to get at is that when we left off, if you haven't listened to last week, get on it. Basically, Jimmy, the nicest guy in the world, the mayor, gets pulled over by a cop. What does he do? He doesn't get arrested. He doesn't get a ticket. He spends an hour and a half on the side of the road. And then the guy makes this astute observation. Why are you bringing around the Ark of the Covenant in your truck, bro? Because the reason I yell at Jimmy all the time to stop doing what he's doing is I equate it to the Egypt Museum in Cairo, or whatever it is, the Cairo Museum, because from 2000 to from 1990 to 2003 or 4 before they redid it, they did more damage to these antiquities of from ancient Egypt. King Tut's body, for example. There's been more damage done to it in the last 100 years than in the last 3,000 years. Mm-hmm. True story. So the problem is that Jimmy has all these incredible, literally incredible antiquities, and it's wonderful that he wants to do this. But some of this stuff is so important to history and delicate. For example, I was holding these pickups, at these prototype pickups that were on the table when I first met him. And these are literally the prototypes that Les Paul used with they're the dawn of time for pickups. I shouldn't be touching them. Nevertheless, snotty-nosed children. And I love the fact that when I met Jimmy, he has such a burden, I need to do this for Les. I need to, I have to. I'm why are you driving with your buddy bringing the first tape machine? He's I can only stay on the East Coast. That's because he brings Les Paul, the inventor of sound-on-sound recordings, tape machine with him to little hotel places with him in the back of a truck. It just lifts it off. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at all this crazy stuff. And look, it's amazing what he wants to do because he's a literalist. Les said to him, I love the idea of putting stuff in everyone's hands. But now he's been gone for a little while. And this stuff is incredibly valuable, but a lot of it hasn't been demystified. There's thousands of notes. And I remember Jim Foster was with me. And at the end of this guitar show, he just gives away one of his prototype boxes that's filled with all these capacitors, and like, no one knows what it does. And just Jimmy gives it away, and he goes, that could be part of the Rosetta Stone that cracks it. But, hey, just give it to that random guy. And I don't mean to be rude, but I'm like, that he's totally right. Like, he could have just given away the part of the tape machine that he took out in 1957 so that no one could figure it out. And like, here's the one piece they don't.
This happens every time.
All right. The point is that I love the fact that he took it so literal, but he couldn't sell anything because he's promising Leslie you do this. He's trying to go around the country, and it's so admirable. But at this point, a lot of this stuff needs to be in a museum, needs to be in a private collection. And one of the number one reasons we're doing this documentary is to document everything. So it doesn't have to just live in Jimmy's head and in his garage, that we can get all these stories out, that we can get all of his stories out, that we can share all of his different inventions, his notes, make sense of some of this stuff, because everything in Jimmy's basement in his garage is like new territory. I mean, literally, he calls me up one day. The way we got this whole thing funded was Benny, I found another guitar in my closet. Can you tell us what that guitar was, Jimmy?
Years ago, Les learned to play the guitar. Obviously, he had a Sears Troubadour when he was 11 years old. It was a beat-up guitar. It was brand new, but it was a Sears model. It wasn't top of the line. And he could play rhythm guitar really good, and he'd play the local, Beekman's barbecue out in Waukesha. But one night, his friend, they had this gimmick where if you didn't have doorbells back then, and you're talking in the 20s, so what they did is they took a string and they put it in all the friends' bedrooms, tied cans to it. So when the kids saw something that was interesting at night, he'd pull it and it'd wake the kid up and they'd go down. But Les did it one step better. He tied it to his foot because he didn't want to miss the ringing of the cans. So one night his friend pulls it, his toe almost yanks off. He goes, come on, we got to get down to, the hell's the name of it? I forgot the name of the bar in Waukesha. He goes, this guy named Sonny Joe Wolverton's playing below the 5th fret. Now back in the day, no one ever played below the 5th fret lead. It was all rhythm. So they sneak in the bedroom or sneak in the bathroom window at the bar, and they're sitting in the back and they're watching this guy. So every week he played, they'd sneak in, and Les had a flashlight and a note, and he would write down where Sonny Joe would put his fingers on the fretboard. Well, he couldn't play lead with his Troubadour because it wasn't the right guitar for it. So he went out and got a Martin guitar. And what he did is he wrote on a fretboard of the Martin guitar the number of the frets from 1 to whatever it was. I forget what it is, 18, whatever the hell it is. And he wrote in red little pen. So when he would go home, he'd take his notes and he'd be able to know where Sonny Joe put his fingers. And after a while, Sonny Joe saw him in the Roadhouse bar. So what do you do every week? You come in here. I see what he goes. I play the guitar and I'm learning from where you put your fingers. I wrote on a fretboard. And later in the story, Les ended up joining Sonny Joe's band at the age of 16. He went on the road. But what happened was years and years before that, when right after I met him, like I said, he gave me a lot of guitars and he gave me this guitar, and I never really put 2 and 2 together. It's like everything. I throw it in a garage, in a closet. So about 8 months ago, I'm cleaning out a closet in the basement where I got a bunch of guitar cases. I open the case. I said, listen, we gotta open this door, clean out this crap. So my daughter says, what are we doing with this guitar case? And it was an old cardboard type case. I said, throw it right in the garbage because it's all filled with mildew. And she goes, I think something's in it. So she opens it and there's his Martin guitar. And I remember it's got the numbers on it. So I got it and I called Martin down in Nazareth, PA. I said, listen, I got this guitar. I was wondering if you could take a look at it. It needs some work. So we went to Martin and I showed the guy there. And the guy's like shaking. I'm telling him the story. And I said, Les was a Gibson guy, but back in the day, this was a guitar he had. He learned to play lead guitar. That's how he learned. So actually, it's at the Martin factory. It's being fixed. It's finished. I think they put it in their museum for a couple of weeks next to a guitar signed by Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. And it's a guitar that we have. And Benny will tell you, it's actually one of those ones that I can't take care of it. It's in a good home, and it funded so far what we're doing.
Yeah, so let's be clear what actually happened. So Jimmy, always every week he sends, like, I think the week before he opened up one of his bins and there was like there was a bunch of rack mount gear with Les's and Mary Ford's actual parameters all written. So like, they could be their own sound people. So like, but this is old stuff. He's like, look, Benny, look what I found. And like, meanwhile, I'm like Googling these things. And Eric, again, our friend who knows everything about audio, it's like, oh, those are really expensive and nice. He just opens it and he's surprised, Benny, I found this. Next week, Benny, I have another surprise. I'm like, dude, what is this now? But wait, there's more. I found a guitar. You did? You just found one? Yeah. I was going to throw it away. Of course, Jimmy, you were going to throw the guitar away. Of course you would. He opens it up and he had told me this story. I said, that's the guitar you have? He goes, yeah. Do you think it's worth anything? Jimmy, please sit down. That's a very, very valuable guitar. Just as a Martin 0017 from 1927, 28. I'm like, that's a valuable guitar. Nevertheless with the provenance. But the thing is, it's not referenced in any of his books or any of his stories. So I realized very quickly, no one knows about this. And we ended up, passing it along to Scott Benson, our buddy, who's behind all of this stuff, because he's been helping with the documentary. And I tell him about it, and he goes, Benny, do you really think that this thing's real? Like, I mean, do you think that Jimmy's like word enough? Like, do you think he'll write it down for us? I'm like, Scott, when we're done with this documentary, no one will question whether Jimmy Wysocki is literally the authority, the best living authority on Les Paul. Like, there's a certain point where there is no way to prove it beyond the fact that Jimmy's saying all this stuff. But the irony is that when I go to Jimmy's house, I'm convinced that there's stuff in the notes. He has so many notes. There's such an absolutely incredible amount, an awesome amount of stuff that, like, I bet you all the little pieces are there. But this is just an example of another week at Jimmy's house. Oh, I'm cleaning out the basement. I just found this Martin guitar that our hero, Les Paul, learned on, which also leads me to the fact that there is a Les Paul Martin, which also leads me to the fact that I think Martin should make a Les Paul Martin. So we're going to go get that guitar and we're going to tell this story for the first time, other than on here, on our documentary with this guitar. Like, no one's even seen this thing. I've never even held it in my hand. It's not in any book. I don't know how you feel about it, Cory, as a guitarist, but when I heard that story, I said, holy cow.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, let me ask you this. This brings up another question. I mean, you must obviously, and I've seen it in person because I was there when you were doing the second part that we referenced. No,
that one. Not that one. That one's at Martin.
That's a different one.
You saw his bedroom guitar.
No, I haven't seen that guitar, but I was going to comment on the amount of stuff. I've seen just a small amount of, obviously, the massive amount of things that you've acquired over time. And I'm curious, I mean, there must be a lot of interpretation that you kind of have to do now after his death. Like, there's probably so many things that you don't even have stories about, I would assume, right? And I'm just curious, maybe if you can tell us what that's like. I mean, going through, and you've said already some of this, but I mean, there's got to be just so much stuff that you don't even know what it is, right?
As you come, I remember coming down the stairs, I think the first time with Benny and Jimmy, they came down the stairs in the basement, and I've got a bunch of his handmade boxes. The first thing, and we brought Alex Skolnick over. Alex Skolnick comes down the stairs, he's like, oh my God. I thought he fell. I mean, but he's just looking at the records and the boxes. He goes, do you know what these are? I'm like, hell no. I don't know what that is. It's like this thing. I uncovered this little, it's got something written on it, Les Paul. I don't know. That's whatever it is. I don't know. It's just, my thing
surprise.
Is, yeah, whenever we do our shows, it's funny because I say you can pick the guitars up, you can plug anything in you want to, but you have to understand if you get electrocuted, you're on your own, because I don't know what Les Paul did with it. It's a staging joke, but it's fun just about every show because I find something that somebody will bring the light out to say what it actually is. And I think there's a lot of things that are still there that I just go over and just put it in the corner for some other time. But Benny's like the guy, yo, dude, you can't. No, that's expensive. This
Well,
was
because so Les was a maniac. He had like new old stock of everything. So like if you needed a capacitor, if you needed a potentiometer, if you needed any kind of knob or whatever. So he's got like 1950s Gibson knobs, like whole sets, beautiful sets of like old Clusen tuners, PAF humbuckers, just lying around. So it's not like I'm saying, hey Jimmy, because that belonged to Les Paul, don't give me the Allen wrench. It's like, dude, that's a potentiometer from a 1955 Les Paul Custom. Someone will pay $600 for that little piece. And he's like, oh, I have a whole box of them. In fact, I will say thank you because I have a Les Paul that sounded kind of meh. And amidst our trips, because Jimmy always sends me home with stuff, which because he knows I'm like a little kid on Christmas morning. He loves laughing.
It never goes with your hands always open.
Well, Don loves me for that. But that said, like, yeah, I told him, I had to call him one time and say, listen, I'm never going to say no. So don't offer me anything that you don't want to give away because I'm incapable. And I am literally overwhelmed every time I go in. He goes, Benny, do you need some pickups? I'm like, what? He goes, oh yeah, Les used to keep these. Like they'd send them from Gibson, so he just put them in as he wanted. So he has like these, I don't even know what they were. I think they're like hand-wired custom shop PAFs from, like the 90s or whatever. But like new old stock from Les's personal collection of if I need to fix it. And I put those things in my guitar, and let me tell you, they sound amazing. But just the idea that a little bit of Les's leftovers are in my guitar, like I can't tell you, like every single day that I play that guitar, I think of him. And because of Jimmy, he gave me one of his 1950s like press releases with him and Mary Ford. I put it right where I practice, so he stares at me with Mary every time I play, thanks to Jimmy. There's no more to that.
Hey, I found a picture you might like.
A little guy named, we were talking about Jeff Beck last episode. We had a whole Jeff Beck thing.
I was at that show. That was his birthday party at the Fat Tuesdays many years ago.
So why don't we talk a little bit about how long have you been doing now the show in total? Is that
he died in 2009 and we started the show in 2000. It was 2000. That year it was the following year, 2010. And it was great. We hooked up, piggybacked with Gibson. Once they found out that I had the stuff that Les from his collection and stuff, it was cool. We'd travel on the tour bus with them and they'd have the new stock on the bus and I'd have the old stock and it worked hand in hand. They could see how it started, the railroad track, or, everything. And then when they restructured, they got rid of the tour buses and everything ended. So we started traveling around with vans and it just got too much. It really did. You have to worry at night. You bring everything into the room.
Yeah.
Where we could just leave it on the tour bus and it would be secure and no one would screw with it. But it just got to be too much. And, getting older, like I said, I'm 60, Joe's 63. It just got too much. So, we would like to continue, but obviously,
let's tell this story because he had a Jimmy Page guitar, right? A guitar that was sent to Jimmy Page. Jimmy didn't really think it sounded that good. So what did they do? They sent it to Papa Les. And Les made it way better, said to Gibson, here's what I did. And of course, what did they say? Like, that's way too expensive. We're not doing that. So he kept it. Fair. Jimmy has this guitar with these custom wound by Les pickups inside. Jimmy Page's artist proof Gibson. No big deal. He left it somewhere and the wires were cut to the pickups because someone tried taking them out. And it's like, do I need to tell you, dude, that like Jimmy Page's guitar, if you just leave it there, like someone's going to try to take it. And that's the thing that I'm scared of. It's not a matter of, I love that Jimmy and Joe are so like by the book what Les told them to do. Like they give little kids strings from Les, like use strings that he used. He used to keep all of his strings after shows and he'd write like, I played the Iridium this day, or I played, Symphony Hall, and he'd give them to like kids, but it's not sustainable. And it's one of those things that like, unfortunately there's enough crappy people out there that all it takes is somebody to do something just not cool, and then he can't do this the way that he does. And I just don't want to see, the first tape machine get maimed, like someone goes in and tries to cut the Mona Lisa. That's how I feel when Jimmy just leaves the stuff unattended on tables at a guitar show, which was how it was in Natick, because when I went to see him, he's like, can you go grab, I remember this is an actual quote, can you go grab Les's number one master on the table? He had one of his original acetate masters framed. It was just like, can you go grab it? He met me 34 seconds before that. Just go grab it. I literally look at Jim Foster and I'm like, dude, should we just leave? Like, I said that to him. Like, should we just leave? I'm like, this is insane. And that's how I feel about everything that's in his possession.
Yeah. The reason that I was asking about like how long you've been in the show, I was wondering if there's been any kind of standout moments or any parts, any incidences or people that you met that have kind of stand out in your mind you can share with us.
We did a show. There's a few, but we did a show in Chattanooga at the Songbird Guitar Museum. It used to be there. They since closed up shop, but they have another portion of the museum there, not as elaborate as that. But we did our show there, and Joe Bonamassa walks in, and we had Les's old guitars, and he's looking at them, and he just looked at Joe, and he goes, "Whose is this stuff?" Joe goes, "It's ours." And he goes, "Wow." So we had the guitar picks Les made with sandpaper. So of course we give stuff away. So we handed it to him, and we explained he made the guitar pick out of different plastic for theirs one with different sound. He had sandpaper because he couldn't hold it with his arthritis, and he's holding it, and he goes to give it back to Joe. And Joe's like, "No, that's for you. You can keep it." And I tell you what, Joe Bonamassa started shaking. He goes, "This is going in Joe Bonamassa's museum." I said, "Where's that?" He goes, "Right in my damn basement." But he was like so taken back.
That's weird. That's where mine is too. It's in my museum, in my basement.
And he was like so taken back. He's holding guitars and this and that. And he was just amazed as to what we do. And he's like, "You guys are doing a great job." Jeff Beck, for instance, we met Jeff Beck on a tour bus. He did the Les Paul tribute. And this was, we were doing a show, and we were on the tour on the Gibson bus, and he came on and he was using it as a dressing room. So we're talking to our bus driver, Donnie Crawford, and he introduces us to Jeff Beck, and Jeff Beck goes, "You guys are doing one hell of a job keeping his legacy." He goes, I just want to say thank you. So we bring a guitar pick out and we show him and we give it to him. And he goes, "Jimmy, I got nothing for you." I'm like, I said, "Jeff, it's no big deal." No. He goes in the back of the bus, comes out with his jeans. He goes, "Well, it's I got to my pants, take them." And he threw me his jeans. I'm like, "I don't want your..." But it was funny. I mean, but when you see, and I know, Siobhán, you're in the business, you're in the industry, you see it all the time. A lot of people say that musicians they got attitudes. Listen, when they're out of their realm, they've got a job to do and they're focused. But you take them out of that realm of show business, they're decent people. They're fun-going people. They're like you and I. They can sit and talk. But I can't imagine being a Jeff Beck, a Bon Jovi, where no matter where you go, everybody's, "Hey, can I get on?" But to be in their peaceful time, it's so pleasant to talk to these guys. Eddie Van Halen. I mean, he's crazy. He was a sweetheart. John Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora, Slash. I mean, these guys are just talking to us, and we're nobodies, really. I mean, we got less of stuff, but brought us into the family of just BSing about Les Paul. And it was so cool. And it's something that I respect all the musicians. I really do, because taken out of their realm of what they do and put them into a realm like this, they're all just normal people just like us.
I want you to get into it, because we talked when we made this episode, because we're not sure what we're going to do with all this, because a lot of this stuff is still unfolding. But the one thing that really came out of this second episode was a very poignant tribute to Les and Eddie Van Halen, because you have probably the greatest Eddie Van Halen story I've ever heard in my entire life. And everyone, like, I mean, look, Alex Skolnick, who's a good friend of ours, who again was part of our first episode, he did a whole podcast on Eddie Van Halen, and then he did a whole podcast on Les. And when he heard that story, he like messages me. He's like, "Benny, that's ridiculous." Like, he was like shaking from how awesome that was, because it's one of those things where everyone's heard everything about Eddie Van Halen. But I want you to tell this story, because the thing is that's great about Les and all the stories that you tell is that at the end of the day, no matter who you're talking about, Les was still cooler. So that everyone looks at you with respect, because it's like, even Eddie Van Halen, he knows where he came from. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, of course Jeff Beck is going to freak out, because he plays guitar because of the things Les did. So can you tell us the story, the Eddie story? It's like one of those things that makes me happy.
Yeah, it was 2007, during the day when he got a call from Les. Either something was wrong or something real important, because he slept all day. Kept his showbiz hours, was up all night. About 10 in the morning, my cell phone rings, Les. I answer. I'm working as a cop. What's up? He goes, get Joe, come over right away. I'm like, oh boy. So I get off of work, I get Joe, we shoot over to the house. We walk into the house, he's got his car, and says, come on, we got to go somewhere. I'm like, where are we going? He goes, come on, I'm driving. Well, Benny loves this, because I drove with Les once, and we ended up in the cornfield at the bottom of his driveway. And so wherever we drive.
Like the mailbox.
Yeah, I always go. So he gets in the car, Joe's in the back, Les is up front, and I got a Chevy Avalanche. So where are we going? He said, get on Route 17, head south. Now, 17 is a highway in Mawa that goes north and south down towards the Parkway. So we get on 17. I said, where are we going? I said, just keep going. Now, he's sitting in the truck. You got to see the passengers looking out the window, looking around. So I said, Les, you got to tell me where we're going. And he points. He goes, we're going over there. Well, he points at the Meadowlands. Now, I know Van Halen's playing there. It's a Friday night, and all my friends are going to the show. I said, Les, you just can't show up. Now, being a cop and everything, I said, you can't. He goes, yeah, I know. So we pull into the Meadowlands, and there's this little chubby little security guard. And I roll my window down. He goes, you got tickets? I'm like, nope. So he turns around and goes, hey, trooper. Now, there's this New Jersey State trooper who turns around about my height. Meanest guy you ever saw. And you're like, got stripes up and down his arm. Comes up to the car. Like, he looks, I got a police shield in the window. I roll the window down and said, yes, sir. He goes, you want a job? I said, yeah, I'm a cop up in Mawa. He goes, you got tickets? I'm like, no, I don't. He goes, yo, bro, I can't let you in the show. I'm like, yeah, but my buddy here, Les Paul. Now I'm in tears laughing, because I'm waiting for the trooper to say, get out. So he looked, I said, my buddy Les Paul wants to go say hi to his buddy Eddie Van Halen. Trooper looks across the truck, runs around the truck. Les rolls the window down, gives it his old howdy. Trooper goes, I just bought a guitar for my daughter. It's got your name on it. Well, Les gives him an autograph, said that's pretty cool, talks to him for a few minutes. I look in front of my truck. I got two New Jersey State troopers with their lights on, escorting us to the back of the Meadowlands. We're parked between Van Halen's tour buses. Two guys come out in suits. They escort us. I said, where do I park this? He goes, leave it right here. Now, I'm telling you, I was 5 feet from the building. So we go in the back door. Alex Van Halen's drum risers there. I'm looking at Joe. I was like, this guy's got to be kidding me. He got us in here. So he goes, knocks on the door. He goes, Eddie's in here. Knocks on the door. The voice inside goes, go the F away. Les looks. He goes, he tells me to go to F away. He opens the door. There's a crash. I'm like, holy shit, Les fell. So we run around the door, and there's Les standing there. There's Eddie Van Halen in khaki pants, no shirt, holding his guitar, and it dropped on the ground. And he's crying. And Les is looking at him. And Eddie goes, you came to see me. And Les said, many years ago, you came to surprise me. He said, I'm paying that favor back. Now, Eddie had just gotten out of rehab. And I said this in our episode, and it was kind of shitty for me to say it that way, that he was whacked.
But he was, because anyone that saw, just to give you an idea, on that tour, I saw him on the 30th of, it was Halloween. So this was November 3rd, 2007. I saw him just a few days before, and he was incredible. And then 3 or 4 nights later in Worcester, he forgot verses to songs and completely train wrecked the thing because he was drinking. And it was very well documented. I mean, again, he dealt with that all of his life. So, you're coming in right at that. He's double fisting.
Yeah, so he was drinking, and Les had seen that, knew he just got out of rehab, and he had his hair cut short. He was looking good, but he was weathered. So Les said, first thing, get rid of the bottle of Gallo wine and get coffee, because you got a show to do. You're a professional. And Les and Hinch started talking. And so we're in this little practice room in the basement of the Meadowlands. So I never told you this story, but so my friends are all out in the parking lot. So I said, Eddie, I said, you do me a favor? He's like, yeah, what? I said, my friends are all out there. If I call them, can you say hi? I said, sure. So I dial my friend Tony. And I said, his name's Tony. So he takes the phone. He's like, Tony, Eddie Van Halen. No, really. I'm with Jim and Joe in my dressing room. And they wanted me to give you a shot, say hello. Well, my friend Tony wouldn't talk to me for 2 months after that. He was so pissed that I did that. But we stayed in that room listening to riffs, every Van Halen riff you can imagine. Eddie's going up. So Eddie looks at Les. He goes, you still got it, Les? He goes, yeah, I think so. And Les goes, you still got it? Eddie goes, I got it. And he's going up and down the neck. Now, you got to look at Les. He's like this.
Just for everyone's reference, when we release this documentary, and this is an example of Jimmy, again, not thinking certain things are important, he didn't tell me there's like 15 incredible photos of Eddie Van Halen and Les to document this. So this entire story, when we do in our documentary, is basically just a photo montage of Eddie and Les. And it's so expressive that you have to, like, everything he's saying is to the T what you'll see in these pictures. Continue.
So he's sitting there, he looks at Eddie, and Eddie's going up and down the neck, and Les is there like, not making any, like, oh my God, you're just looking at him like this, shaking his head. So Eddie goes up, and I think he finished with Eruption, like going up and down. And Eddie's like, what do you think? He goes, like that. So Eddie looks at Les, and he goes, do you still got it, Les? He goes, I think so. So hands him the guitar. Les puts on the Wolfgang guitar, Eddie Van Halen Wolfgang guitar. He looks at Eddie, goes, turn that amp up. Eddie goes, whoa. So all of a sudden, Les goes, you ready? And Eddie and his guitar tech, Matt Brock at the time, all of us, Eddie goes, we're ready. So Les takes the high E, turns it up, and just bends the string. Now the sustain is just ringing, one note. And it's ringing for like 10, 15 seconds. And all of a sudden, Eddie grabs the neck of the guitar and goes, I get it, Les. And we stayed in that room for about 2 hours. And then we went into his dressing room. It was just such a night to see the two of them, be together and be in their own little world. They sat on his sofa and they were just laughing. Valerie Bertinelli was there. Wolfgang came in. Eddie introduced him to Les Paul. They were sitting there when Eddie's manager came in and said, Eddie, you got to go. It's time to go. And Eddie looked right at him and goes, I'll go when I'm ready. I'm talking to my friend. And that's when Les got up, kissed Eddie Van Halen on the forehead and said, go get him, Eddie, you got to go. And that was the last time they talked in person. And so what happened was, I always tell the story that Les had the little black box, the Les Pulverizer. That little box, it was a looper.
Wait, you can't skip this part. You can't
He's
skip
about to tell this part.
What part are you talking about?
When you go and watch the show.
Oh,
when he goes,
that's coming.
Okay.
That's after.
All right, fine.
So
continue.
So
I thought you were going to skip it.
I'll jump into it. So the show's going on now. They put us up in this suite. So we're walking through the Meadowlands. They put us in an elevator. So we get out on the mezzanine, and the place is packed. Well, two troopers are with us. So somebody yells out, "Who is that?" And so you hear, "Oh, that must be Eddie's father." Then somebody yelled, "That's Les Paul." Well, everybody's crowding around, and so finally they shove us into this suite. So it's Joe, myself, Les, and there was a young couple in there. So I guess it was I think it was a DeWalt's box, DeWalt the construction company. That was their box. So the guy goes, "Who are you guys?" And I go up there and say, "Well, this is Les Paul," and they put us in. He goes, "The Les Paul?" I said, "Yeah." So now Les goes and sits next to his girlfriend, puts his arm around her. She's like freaked, don't know who this guy is. He whispers in her ear. So now she's got her arm around him. They're like in the front row. As soon as Eddie comes on stage, he hits the notes and they go, Les puts his hand, because we had the glass. Now he put his hand to the window backwards. So his knuckles just before, and he turned around to me. He goes, "Too much bass," because he felt the vibration. So we sat watching about 5-6 songs. Les goes, "Okay, Jimmy, let's go." I'm like, "All right." So he huddles us in the middle of the room, the couple, Joe, myself. And he goes, "You guys watching the show, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's great." And he goes, "I got to tell you a secret." I said, "What's that?" He goes, I created a monster. And that was the last time we left the show and went home. And but that was the last time that they met. So what happened was Eddie was intrigued with Les's little black box. If you watch the episode of Eddie Van Halen when he showed up at Les's show, it's on YouTube, where he surprised Les. And he questioned Les about that black box. Where do I get one? And Les said, no, you can't have it. So what happened over the years, Eddie would bother Les all the time. Can I buy that black box? It didn't work anymore, but it was just to have the black box. And Les would always say no. So when Les died, Eddie knew I had it. So he would call me like once a month. And I looked at the number, I had it memorized. And every time I saw the number on my phone, I picked the phone up and said, nah, Eddie, not yet. It's not for sale. And he offered me a crazy number for that box. And unfortunately, he passed away before the box was, probably, I should have sold it to him. But that was, he died for that box. I should have done it, but I didn't. But it's still in a good home. It's still here. And I take it on the road with us all the time. I let people, I was up at Ernie's house. We brought the black box up there. But we take it all over the place. It's cool to let people hold it and see a little bit of history. So it's fun.
I remember the first moment that I met you. You not only handed me the guitar, but you put the Les Pulverizer on it and plugged in his gooseneck microphone, because anyone that knows Les Paul, Les used to control his microphone through his guitar, which is one of the telltale signs of his guitars. So I'm sitting there, and within like a minute of meeting you, I'm playing his guitar, I'm playing through his amp with his actual cable, and then you put the box that Eddie Van Halen offered you absurd amounts of money right on your, and you're basically just like, have at it, Benny. And the crazy part was a whole bunch of people, they see this and they just came in, and I felt like a rock star, because I'm literally playing Les's personal rig with the Les Pulverizer, and people are like, who's this guy? And meanwhile, I'm like, I'm trying to channel the spirit of Les Paul. All that's coming out is wagon wheel. But, I tried. It didn't sound like him, unfortunately, even though that's the thing that people don't realize about guitar. You can play through Les Paul's amp. You can play through his guitar. You can play, sing into his microphone. You could even play with his pick. And yet I still don't sound anything like him.
Alex and Bumblefoot sounded like Les Paul when they.
Oh, well, they're incredible players.
Yeah, they're way better.
They could probably play like anybody.
And they did out of the blue. And he said, I never played this before. In our museum up in Mawa, the two of them sat down with Les' guitar and they started playing How High the Moon. And Alex goes, I never played that before. And Bumblefoot's, I'm just going along with him. It was amazing.
Well, the thing that's incredible, and I'll say this, and I've said this to Bumblefoot, but I feel like that guy's a savant. Like, I feel like he's like Mozart. Like, he's telling us, oh, I wrote this song when I was 5. I still could play it. And it's like this, he's a painter. He's a producer. Like, he's just like next level. Rick Beato, like one of my heroes who talks about music all the time, always refers to him as like the ultimate guitarist, because he really is. Alex Skolnick, halfway through his life, has already said, all right, I did this metal thing, but I'm going to learn jazz, which is incredibly hard. So he's like a Jedi. But to watch Bumblefoot pull all of these songs, he played Dire Straits, he played the Beatles, they did a Carol Kay medley because it was her birthday that day. We called her and wished her happy birthday, so they did this medley. He just pulls out of these songs like Rain Man out of his head. And Alex, even though he's like an absolute Jedi, you can see it on his face, like trying so hard just to be like, what is Bumblefoot doing? And the ability for him, it's like the computer versus the chess master watching those two play Les Pauls. And I got to tell you, it was such a humbling experience, because those guys basically said hi to us. We sat them down, each gave them a separate Les Paul in through a Fender amp and through a Gibson amp, and they just went. And it was like our own personal show. Just grab your popcorn. And they were just incredible. I mean, and you could see it on their faces because they were so inspired by all the stuff around them. I have to think that the spirit of Les definitely contributed to the awesomeness of that, which, by the way, some of it you can go see at theneuroticguitarist.com, which we haven't even mentioned yet.
Yeah, well, we can get into that. I mean, it looks like we may have to continue without Cory. He says that he lost power and internet, so it's going to be probably
stuck with one of you. I guess I'd choose you, Siobhán.
But yeah, I mean, maybe let's talk about, what are the goals for, the upcoming years, what you guys are working on together, how to reach more people, like what's sort of in the plan for the coming future with this whole project?
Well, to start, when I met Benny, the ultimate goal was to continue doing our shows. I mean, I love going out and putting a smile on people's faces, to actually hold this stuff, tell them a little history, but I'm not driving. So ultimately, it's one of these, to get sponsorship, to get a bus, to get us out to places we've never been before, where we can, tell these people, listen, this is Les Paul stuff. You get to hold it and do schools, do music schools, like go up to Boston, do all the big schools up there, the music schools.
Well, what I want to add to that is, and Bumblefoot was great about this, and so was Ernie Bach. Everyone was saying this. It's not about don't do the show. It's about go and specifically do the show for the right people. So, if there's a rock and roll fantasy camp or you have Bumblefoot and Joe Perry playing, that's the kind of thing. I think Bumblefoot had actually even said he'd set you up with those guys. That's a lot different than going to the Natick Hotel with a bunch of random massholes, just walking in, touching all this stuff. So it's not a matter of, you shouldn't take it out, but you should definitely cherry pick what you have. And I think that Jimmy's story, more than it is even a guitar show thing, is a motivational speaker thing, because he went from, growing up in this town to being the mayor of the town that Les built, you know what I mean, with his music. And then the gatekeeper to all this stuff, not even being a musician. He's the gatekeeper that Jeff Beck and, Joe Bonamassa and Zakk Wylde look at with reverence, because Les, looked at him with reverence. So that's what we're trying to capture with this. And I hope that we can share Jimmy's story so that instead of him basically being like, oh yeah, can I come to your guitar booth for $75? That people are calling him, because the stuff he has, it speaks for itself.
It's been a fun ride so far, and it's to see, Jimmy and Benny, the work they're doing towards this, these episodes to ultimately get us to hopefully it's some type of documentary about Les Paul, how we met, and the inside story as to what kind of guy this really was. I mean, a lot of people don't know Les Paul. They think it's a guitar, but all the stories, I mean, he was just such a perfect gentleman. A lot of people would think that he would be so out there, I'm Les Paul, and he was the total opposite. He was just such a good friend. He was part of my family. I became part of his family. My daughter used to call him Uncle Les, And when she was born, I'll show you this. Hang on a second. Give me a second.
I hope you guys are all tuned in, 2020-d.com.
Yeah, great visual content here.
Yeah.
When she was born, he gave her this, a Les Paul Pee-wee.
Oh my gosh.
He wrote on it,
wow.
Here's your high doll from Les Paul. So what happened was, when she got older, let's just say, is she practicing the guitar? I'm like, not really. So when she got into like 6th grade, he goes, how's the guitar going? And she's like, well, she really doesn't like the guitar unless she likes the drums. He's like, the drums? And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, Les, she likes the drums. He goes, wait a minute, I'll be right back. So he goes out in the back room, and give me a minute. Comes out of the back room.
Tune into the YouTube, 2020-d.com, to watch Jimmy's incredible just running around his basement. I hope that never floods.
Oh, no, I got a French drain pump. So what he did, he goes, here, she likes the drums, so he goes out and he hands her this. He goes, have her bang on this. This is his actual snare drum from his studio in his house.
Wow.
Never
oh, my gosh.
It's still kind of beat up, but it's got his notes on it. Says 1950-something Ludwig. But yeah, I never did it. But that's the kind of guy it was.
Yeah, it's an old Ludwig Superphonic that it's like my favorite snare ever. And just another thing that I'm like, I could just put a new head on that and just ruin this friendship, but it'll sound great forever.
Oh my gosh.
One of those things, like we were in his basement, and because I had to clean the basement. So he gave me his workbench. Now I had his actual workbench from his basement. It took us 3 hours to disassemble in the basement. Screws, it was crazy. He built it, and we gave it to Gibson to put in there. I wanted to put it in the beginning of their show or their work area. So every day a worker went in, they touched the workbench and go to work. Like they do Notre Dame, they hit the thing up top. And that ended up in, I guess, Henry's possession. And when they got the new owners, it wasn't in Gibson, so it disappeared. And unfortunately, that happens. There was a couple items that we had given away that ended up, Les had given me a set of golf clubs. And I said,
this is the stuff that hurts my souls, guy. So you understand why I'm like, Jimmy, please just lock all this stuff up and don't tell anyone where it is.
We're in his garage.
Get ready to cry.
We're in his garage one day, and we're cleaning up, throwing stuff away. I come across this old leather guitar, golf bag. It's got these wooden shafts on it. And I'm like, you play golf? He goes, nah. He goes, whenever I wanted to talk with Bing, the only way we could talk would be on the golf course. So Bing gave me the clubs, and he goes, so you can throw them away. I'm like, Les, these are Bing Crosby's golf clubs. You can't throw them away. So Les tells me the story. He goes, I didn't really like golf. He goes, so when we went on the golf course, I didn't have any golf balls. So I went into the pro shop, and they were like 25 cents a piece. He goes, there was a field out there with hundreds of them, a driving range. So he took all the driving range balls and put them in a bag, and that's what he played with. So I said, Les, you can't throw it away. And I knew what he was doing. He wanted me to take. So I took it, put it in my car, sat in my basement forever. When he dies, my wife's like, what are you doing with these things? So I looked online, and I found a Bing Crosby golf course in Santa Rancho, California. So I called him. I said, bless you.
Thank you.
So I saw the golf course. So I called the golf course. I said, listen, I'd like to do something. I've got these golf clubs that were given to Les by Bing, your golf course. I wonder if you want to put them on display for a while in your showroom. The guy I speak to, his name was Scott Irwin. I think it was Scott Irwin. Oh, we'd be honored. So he sent me letters. We were corresponding back and forth. I send the golf clubs out there. Anytime you want to come out to play, I said, yeah. So about 6 months later, I called the golf course, and I asked to speak to Scott Irwin. Oh, he's no longer here. So I said, well, I'm the guy who gave you the golf clubs, the Les Pauls. The lady on the phone said, what clubs? Gone. Yeah. So, and you live and learn. Unfortunately, if the guy has to take the golf clubs, so be it. But you live and learn. And like Benny mentioned with the Jimmy Page guitar, we had that in a museum. And the only way to get to the Jimmy Page guitar that was hanging up next to Carlos Santana's, John Bon Jovi's, was that you were buzzed into this room. So only but people with access to this museum could get in there. So we dropped it off. We did a tour. We dropped it off at their showroom and went back 3 months later to pick the guitar up to take it on another show. And I go on the tour bus and I plug it in. It didn't work. I'm like, what the? Now this is Jimmy Page's guitar. I'm like, what the hell? So I send it back on the bus to Gibson. Our buddy, Dusty Loomis, who was a luthier in restoration, called me the day later. He goes, where was this guitar? And I'll tell you exactly, it was in the Gibson showroom in New York City. I said, why? He goes, because somebody tried to cut the pickups that Les had made to get out of the guitar. I said, what? He goes, Jimmy, these pickups are $1 million pickups because Les Paul made them. His notes were on. And somebody inside tried to steal them. I think it's safer for us to let people play this stuff because if it's hidden somewhere, they're going to try and take a knob. Trust me, I've had guitars where knobs were taken. They tried to take the pick guards off. But it's safer when we let little kids play it, anybody play it in front of us. Mm-hmm. And one lady we let play a guitar, and she goes, how much is that guitar worth? I said, let him finish. The kid was like 9. He's going up and down. And it was a custom. I said, that's about $500,000. She goes, my son breaks concrete. I looked at her. I said, watch him play this guitar. And when he was done, he handled it gently, put it back. I said, he's not going to hurt
wow.
And we've learned that it's safer to do what we do, even though Benny disagrees. But
well, no, there's something to be said for what you said, because normally I'd be, if you guys were assholes, I'd be scheming like, Jim, we could totally take his stuff, and if he's not looking or whatever. But you're like, Benny, here, just go take Les's personal autobiography manuscript and bring it over to Joe. And it's like a test of like whether you're valiant and you have like, all of those. I don't know the word because I don't have it. And then you're true. I said to him, I can't be a scumbag around you because you've given me so much opportunity that like literally it's so transparent that I'd be a dick that I just have to be nice. So like every time I go there, he'll be like, Benny, do you want something? Because he knows I'm like a little kid in Christmas morning. And just so you know, I give most of the stuff that Jimmy gives me away. Like Paul Lorenzo, for his birthday, one of the things I gave him a DI box that Jimmy had given me, and he has tons of his old promo pictures, but they're like one-offs or whatever. And I gave him a promo picture of Les playing a little mini guitar. And as much as I wanted to keep it, Paul immediately looked at me and he was just like, "This is from Les's house?" Like, yeah, it's his personal picture of himself. I can have this? Yes. Really? Yes.
We get it.
What do you want? What do you want? What do you want for this?
Yeah.
What do you want? And the look on his face is exactly what Jimmy says all the time. It was just like one of those things where we made somebody's day. And it's like, I appreciate that Jimmy does that, because every string he's given me, I've given to somebody else, and they lose their mind every time because it's Les Paul. And it never gets old. And you guys ask, what is the next step? And I'm so happy to say that one of the reasons I started playing a Les Paul was Joe Perry. And we've had Steve Wood just recently on the show, who manages him with our friend Paul Geary. Well, what we're trying to do, and clearly we know Joe has reference for Les, is get Joe to be a part of this documentary and to put some of these things and to have Jimmy tell his stories to Joe Perry. Because one of the things we've realized that in filming this is that the look of excitement on the people's faces that live music, that are as passionate about it as myself, you guys, Bumblefoot is way better than just like any Joe Schmo. Like cutting to Bumblefoot as he's telling the story is so much better. So like, and you see a guy like Joe Perry or a guy like Billy Gibbons, these guys are a little bit jaded. They have had everything offered to them, every single thing. But when you mention Les Paul, I guarantee you, no matter what, these guys are going to revert back to when they were kids learning how to play guitar. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to capture that excitement, which is behind everything Jimmy does. Hopefully with Joe Perry this month.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, it's an incredible thing. And one of the things that fascinated me when I saw the show, when you came to Ernie Bach's house, was all of the papers and the manuscripts. And I'm wondering, like, what, some of them obviously I'm sure were organized, but it seems like a lot of them are just kind of chaos all over the place, things written on the back of printed sheets of receipts. Is there any plan to sort of catalog all of that or interpret it? I'm fascinated by some of the things even in the pages you gave me that has little drawings that I don't even understand. Obviously some schematic for something and
perfect
notes
example.
For a memoir.
Gave you notes that you didn't even care about that probably
I do care
break
about
the
it.
Rosetta Stone. And that you're
why
like, it's a stick
I'm
figure.
terrified of losing this piece of paper, because I'm like, this could be the key to something.
I have
I
more.
will not.
I've got more. It's with all the paperwork, it was kind of funny because it was in a big box, and he had everything. He was very organized, and he had all his contracts in boxes, but everything he had was very, very organized. So when he threw this file cabinet away, he knew I was going to take it, throw it away, and it ended up in my truck. And I took all the paper, got rid of the file cabinet, took all of it and just put it in a tote. And then I realized, I looked at a couple of the documents and I'm like, wow, look, he's got a drawing of a pickup. He's got a drawing of an amplifier. Someday, somewhere down the road, this might be valuable to someone or a museum to have. And it wasn't until I met Benny where I went back and looked at some of his manuscripts for his book. I used to just hand them out. And then I met a guy who was the curator of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Mississippi. And they had white gloves on. And that's when I met Benny. And Benny's like, Jimmy, your hand oil can ruin these things. You can't touch these. These got to go in a museum.
This is a perfect example. So these are schematics from a 1955 Les Paul. It says 2/25, 1955, and they're like absolutely perfectly preserved. There's one that's a bass guitar, but these are just from some of the pages of stuff that has gone through my hands, and I could tell you that some of the notes I have in my possession that I've been trying to demystify. I sent them to our friend John Garabedian. He goes, Benny, this looks like certain frequencies. And the responses to certain frequencies. So if I had to surmise what this was, it's a guy, testing a microphone and seeing how it reacts. And I brought it down to Steve Morrill, my luthier, and he's like, Benny, this guy clearly had a technical mind, and he was trying to put like a technical number on like a sound. 100 pages of just numbers of him basically putting certain electrical responses and frequencies off microphones to basically, you could see, like, this is how his manifesto to how he figured out sound. And then on the next page, it's like, and here's a pickup. It's thousands of pages.
I don't think I can ever catalog it in chronological order. There's just so many. Sure. I mean, I tried to keep them together as I found them in the file, but there's just so many of them. And you read some of them, and some of them are like so interesting. It's hard to understand some of his writing at times. But to somebody, trust me, everything he gave me, I treasure like it's a lost treasure. But to some people, like the music people like yourself, Siobhán, like Joe Perry, Billy Gibbons, Eddie Van, it's like the Bible to them. You know, it's like, yeah, Les gave me this stuff, and not that I downplay it, but I mean, yeah, I know it's priceless, I guess, in a way, but to the people in the industry, all four of you or three of you, it's a different level than the way I look at it. And to put it in the people's hands that appreciate it is part of the deal I made. You know, let the people see, touch, and play it, and sometimes they walk away with it. So somebody has to be one day at a show. So, Jimmy, what about when you do your shows, if there's no more stuff to give away? I said, show over.
It seems like there's a massive amount of stuff that still remains. So it would be hard to believe that it would disappear in any of our lifetimes.
Well, that's part of the whole, like, my passion for this documentary, because, you know, and Jim Foster has said this multiple times, like, this is not just a documentary. This could be literally a full-time, for the foreseeable future thing, because every single thing in Jimmy's basement, in his possession, is incredible. Like, I'll tell you, like, things I've randomly happened upon just in his basement. Oh, so one of the things is, you know, an SG guitar stands for solid guitar. And a lot of people that are guitar nerds know that between like 1961 and 1963, the Les Paul Custom was basically the SG. And then there's all these rumors as to why it reverted back to being just the original Les Paul, and then the SG became the SG and not the Les Paul Custom. And in 1963, Les got divorced from Mary, and so a lot of people said he didn't like it because it looked like, you know, the devil horns, or he just didn't like the way it played, like all these different things. We find this piece of paper, and in Les's own handwriting, he explains why he left Gibson. He basically got fired, mutual leaving. Mary Ford wanted to be a mom and enjoy life, and he could not put the guitar down. Like, he writes it all out. This is just a random page amongst thousands of pages, but it demystifies the story of one of the most incredible Gibson guitars in history. And then just like 2 pages later, he's talking about the mob in Chicago. And I'm like, dude, like, any one of these things could be, again, a surprise for an entire week, and you could bring down almost any expert, and they're going to be like, holy shit. Like, I remember going on an archaeological dig in Israel when I was a kid, and we found so much shit that I thought, they must have buried this stuff. Like, that's how I felt. That's how I feel every time I go to Jimmy's house. I'm like, oh, we're going to find something new now. Like, and I just sit there and wait for Jimmy to show me something I don't know, because there's so much of it. And Les was so meticulous with his notes. He was definitely a pack rat. He kept everything. I mean, you have every phonograph, like, is it the stylus? Yeah. And he dates how long the stylus lasted. And he's got them all. Like, that's just one example of, like, ridiculousness.
Yeah.
It's fun to share.
Well, we're, coming to the end of hour number 2. I mean, Jim, we want to really thank you for your time and sharing everything with us. And we'll definitely keep everyone up to date on the work that you and Ben are doing with the documentary and everything. And we'll have links to, the Facebook and Instagram
TheNeuroticGuitarist.com, Cory. They can go see episode 1, which is probably the only thing that's going to see the light of day until we figure out some of this stuff, because Jimmy has so many surprises. Even on this show, I've learned new things about the Eddie Van Halen story. And I all I could think is, like, why didn't you tell me that? Like, we've had cameras at your house, man. Like, why don't you tell me these things?
Well, because there'll be something new every time. Like he said, it will trigger something different every time he tells the story. And that's part of the magic, Ben.
Now, if anybody's watching And just don't show up at my house. Call me if you want to come see the stuff.
We won't disclose your address.
It's not hard to find, but give me a heads up before you show up. I want to thank all three of us. It's been a pleasure. Obviously, I could talk Les Paul all day. And
no, this has been amazing. I mean, it's really a pleasure for us, and you're such a kind person. I'm so glad I got to meet you in person, and I'm really excited for the things that you guys are going to do together, and it's just an amazing thing what you're doing.
Super. Thank you for taking the time out from tour. And
of course, it's my pleasure, really, to be here.
Cory, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to hang out with friends of Benny's, and you know that.
Yeah, look forward to meeting in person.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometime soon.
Well, you can come over anytime. Just give me a hey-yo.
All
there
right.
You go.
Only if we have a couple beers that we open with Les's bottle opener there.
Absolutely.
Before he donates it and then it disappears.
All right, guys. Yeah, right. 2020-d.com. Like and subscribe. Do all those fun things, and we will see you next time.
It's one thing to kind of, try some songs out and stuff in front of some friends and, small kind of crowd. But, some of the places we played were pretty big and there was a lot of people there. So I found myself just standing there looking at a sea of people with no one else on stage but me. And I was like, please, God, somebody give me some whiskey to numb the pain. Like, fast.